What if I told you that one of history's most controversial thinkers, Niccolo Machiavelli, left behind a lesson about women and power that still applies today? A lesson hidden inside his infamous book, The Prince, but often overlooked, a truth that explains not only politics and leadership, but also human relationships, gender dynamics, and the way influence truly works today. We dive into Machiavelli's timeless truth about women and power. Machiavelli lived in Renaissance Italy, a time of ruthless politics, assassinations, betrayals, and shifting alliances. Survival demanded cunning, not kindness. He wrote The Prince as a guide for rulers who wanted to keep their power in such a dangerous world. But inside his writings, he compared power itself to something very human, very personal. He compared fortune, the unpredictable force that rules over life. To a woman, Machiavelli wrote, "Fortune is a woman, and it is necessary, if you wish to master her, to conquer her by force." Now, before we dismiss this as outdated or offensive, we must understand what he meant. He wasn't literally speaking about women. He was speaking about power itself by calling fortune a woman. Machiavelli suggested that power does not yield easily. It favors those who act boldly, decisively, and without hesitation. Just as a ruler cannot wait politely for opportunities, neither can anyone, man or woman, wait passively for influence to be handed to them. Power, like fortune, must be seized. Here's the timeless truth. Machiavelli's metaphor revealed how society often underestimates women, yet also fears their ability to disrupt order when they act with boldness. For centuries, women were denied formal political power, yet time and again, women who acted with determination, Cleopatra, Elizabeth I, Catherine the Great, proved Machiavelli's principle. They didn't wait for the world to allow them to rule. They took the risks that timid men avoided, and that's the heart of Machiavelli's truth. Power respects boldness, no matter who wields it. Fast forward to today, boardrooms, politics, media, even social platforms, all are modern battlefields for power. Machiavelli's lesson still applies. Those who hesitate are forgotten. Those who are too cautious are overtaken, but those who act with confidence, with daring, with strategy, they bend fortune in their favor. This is why women in power today, whether CEOs, political leaders, or cultural icons, still echo Machiavelli's words. They don't ask for permission. They command respect by embodying boldness, not compliance. So, what is Machiavelli's timeless truth about women in power? It's not about gender roles or stereotypes. It's about the essence of power itself. Power is unpredictable. Power does not reward hesitation. Power yields to those who act with courage by personifying fortune as a woman. Machiavelli forced readers to see power not as something neutral and mechanical, but as something emotional, volatile, and alive. And like any living force, it must be confronted, not begged in the end. Machiavelli wasn't giving advice just to kings and princes. He was describing a universal reality. Power belongs to those who dare, and whether in the Renaissance or in the 21st century, whether held by men or women, the lesson remains the same. If you want power, don't wait for it. Seize it. That is Machiavelli's timeless truth. Machiavelli understood something most leaders ignored. Power is not only about brute force, it is about seduction. Just as a suitor must win affection with charm, a ruler must win loyalty with appearances, promises, and spectacle. Women throughout history who held power intuitively mastered this principle. Cleopatra ruled not just with armies, but with allure. Elizabeth I was called the Virgin Queen, yet she played suitors, nobles and foreign kings against each other with masterful strategy. This is not weakness. This is Machiavellian strength. The ability to shape perception is greater than the ability to swing a sword, because swords rust, but influence, if cultivated, lasts generations. Here lies the paradox. Machiavelli's writings reflected a world that often punished women for being bold, even while rewarding men for the same behavior. A prince could be ruthless, and people would call him strong. A woman could be ruthless, and people would call her dangerous, unnatural, or corrupt. And yet, the women who truly rose above their time didn't beg for approval. They accepted the double standard as part of the battlefield. They leaned into it. They weaponized the very stereotypes designed to limit them. Catherine the Great ruled Russia not by hiding her ambition, but by embracing it so completely that no man could challenge her throne. She embodied what Machiavelli called virtù, the ability to shape fate with one's own will, to truly grasp Machiavelli's truth. We must understand two words: virtue and fortune. Virtue is not virtue in the modern moral sense. It means skill, decisiveness, boldness, the quality of bending circumstances to your will. Fortune is luck, chance, the unpredictable winds of fate. Machiavelli said, "Half of our lives are ruled by fortune. The other half is ruled by virtue." His message? You cannot control everything, but you can control how you respond. And when fortune is turbulent, when life is unfair, it is virtue that separates leaders from victims. For women in history, this was even more profound. Society stacked fortune against them, but with virtue, they could bend the game, reshaping destiny in ways men never anticipated. Let's step into today: modern politics, corporate boardrooms. Social media influence. Machiavelli's metaphor of fortune as a woman flips in the 21st century because now, women are no longer just metaphors for power. They are wielders of it. The lesson is clear. In a world still full of uncertainty, the people, men or women, who rise are those who embody virtue, those who take bold risks when others hesitate, those who understand timing, appearances, and strategy. And today's fortune is not a battlefield of swords and crowns. It is an economy of attention. If you control the narrative, you control the power. Another layer of Machiavelli's truth about women and power lies in the myth of niceness. Society often tells women to be agreeable, accommodating, and pleasant. But Machiavelli warned against rulers who tried too hard to be loved. He wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." The same principle applies today. Leaders, especially women, are often pressured to win approval. But true power does not come from pleasing everyone. It comes from commanding respect. And respect is not given, it is taken. The eye. Women who embody Machiavelli's timeless truth are not the ones who soften themselves to fit expectations. They are the ones who embrace strength, decisiveness, and strategy, even if it means being misunderstood. Machiavelli was obsessed with legacy. He knew that rulers come and go, but those who shape the future live forever. This is where women in power carry an added dimension. Their victories often ripple beyond politics or titles. They shift cultural imagination. They redefine what leadership looks like for the generations that follow. Think of Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat. Think of Margaret Thatcher reshaping Britain's role in the world. Think of modern entrepreneurs, artists, and activists who wield influence not just through position, but through presence. That is Machiavelli's final truth. Power is not only about surviving the present, it is about rewriting the future. So, what is Machiavelli's timeless truth about women in power? It is this: power is fortune, unpredictable, wild, and alive, but fortune bends to virtue, to boldness, skill, and willpower. And those who rise, whether men or women, do so not by waiting, but by seizing, shaping, and daring. Machiavelli may have lived 500 years ago, but his lesson is alive today. Power belongs to the bold, and women, far from being the metaphor of power, have proven time and again they are its masters. If Machiavelli had lived in ancient Egypt, he would have written entire chapters about Cleopatra. Cleopatra VII ruled not just with beauty, but with strategy. She knew Rome's empire could either destroy Egypt or protect it. Instead of resisting fortune, she mastered it. She aligned herself first with Julius Caesar, then with Mark Antony, two of the most powerful men of their time. But here's the truth: Cleopatra was never their puppet. She used her alliances to secure Egypt's independence, to stabilize her throne, and to ensure her children would inherit power. Machiavelli would have admired her. He wrote that rulers must be both lion and fox, strong enough to fight, clever enough to deceive. Cleopatra embodied both. She seduced with charm but ruled with cold calculation. She is proof of Machiavelli's claim: fortune favors the bold. Fast forward to Renaissance England. Elizabeth I, daughter of Henry VIII, faced endless threats: foreign invasion, domestic rebellion, and distrust because of her gender. How did she survive? She turned her supposed weakness into her greatest weapon. She declared herself the Virgin Queen, married to her country, This allowed her to avoid being controlled by any foreign prince or domestic noble. Machiavelli taught that rulers must master appearances, even if it meant deception. Elizabeth's virginity was a political myth, but it gave her unmatched authority. She played the game so well that she left England stronger, richer, and more unified than it had ever been for Machiavelli. Elizabeth would have been the perfect case study. Appear virtuous, act decisive, and never reveal your full hand. Few stories match Catherine the Great of Russia. A German princess with no claim to the throne, she married into the Russian royal family when her husband, Peter III, proved incompetent. She didn't wait for fortune to decide her fate. She staged a coup, seized power, and ruled for over 30 years. Machiavelli would have called her the embodiment of virtù. She expanded Russia's empire, modernized its administration, and secured her place as one of history's most formidable rulers. Her lesson: when fortune closes doors, virtù creates new ones. Catherine did not accept her role as a powerless consort. She rewrote her destiny. It's easy to think Machiavelli's lessons are only for kings and queens, but his truth about women and power lives on in the modern world. Look at business. The women who rise to CEO positions in male-dominated industries do not do so by waiting their turn. They embrace boldness, they take risks, they command respect. Even when it comes with criticism, look at politics leaders like Angela Merkel, Jacinda Ardern, and Kamala Harris. All embody Machiavelli's principles in different ways, balancing compassion with firmness, strategy with timing, and appearance with reality. And look at culture. Influence today is no longer about thrones, it is about attention. Social media, queens, entrepreneurs, activists, they all prove Machiavelli's point. Power does not reward hesitation, it rewards audacity. Here's where the metaphor evolves. Machiavelli compared fortune to a woman because it was unpredictable, emotional, and untamed. But in the 21st century, fortune has become something else. It is speed. Attention spans are short, opportunities vanish overnight. Power shifts at the pace of a tweet in this world. The Machiavellian lesson for women and men alike is the same. Those who wait are forgotten. Those who act boldly, decisively, command the moment. So what is Machiavelli's timeless truth about women and power? It is not about gender roles. It is about the very nature of power itself. Power is alive, unpredictable, and rarely given freely. But it yields to those who embody virtù, to those who dare, who risk, who seize it without apology. And history has shown, from Cleopatra to Catherine, from Elizabeth to modern leaders, that women are not simply subjects of fortune. They are its masters, because in the end, as Machiavelli would remind us, fortune belongs to the bold. If Machiavelli had walked the streets of 20th century London, he would have found a ruler in Margaret Thatcher, who perfectly fit his vision. Thatcher, Britain's first female prime minister, ruled with a style so uncompromising that she earned the nickname the Iron Lady. She understood Machiavelli's principle: it is better to be feared than loved. If you cannot be both, while many criticized her harshness, her boldness made her unforgettable. She privatized industries, faced down unions, and refused to bend during the Falklands War, whether one admires her or despises her. The Machiavellian lesson is clear: hesitation loses power. Decisiveness secures it, like Elizabeth I before her. Thatcher used appearances strategically. She softened her voice, sharpened her rhetoric, and turned her femininity into contrast against her iron will. In doing so, she transformed fortune into her servant, not her master, across the globe. Another woman wielded power in ways Machiavelli would have studied with fascination. Indira Gandhi, Prime Minister of India, she was called the only man in her cabinet. Why? Because she ruled not through compromise, but through ruthless decisiveness. During crises, she imposed emergency rule, silencing opposition and centralizing authority. Critics called her authoritarian. Admirers called her strong. Machiavelli would have smiled knowingly. He wrote that rulers who hesitate invite chaos, but rulers who act, even harshly, retain control. Indira Gandhi's story reflects the eternal paradox for women in power. Firmness earns respect, but also sparks accusations of tyranny. Yet, like Catherine the Great, she chose virtù over vulnerability. Not every story is one of triumph. Some reveal the limits of Machiavellian strategy in modern democracies. Hillary Clinton's career shows how appearances can make or break power. Machiavelli warned rulers that men judge more with their eyes than their hands. In other words, perception outweighs reality. Clinton had vast political experience, resilience, and knowledge. Her virtue was undeniable, but her image became her greatest obstacle. In a world where women leaders are judged more harshly, every misstep was magnified. Every calculated move called manipulation. Machiavelli would say she failed, not because she lacked skill, but because she never fully mastered the art of controlling perception. Fortune, in her case, remained untamed, but power does not live only in palaces or parliaments. Sometimes, influence is cultural, and in that arena, Oprah Winfrey stands as a modern, Machiavellian figure. Oprah did not conquer fortune with armies or decrees. She conquered it with presence, with storytelling, with the ability to connect with millions on a deeply personal level. Machiavelli wrote that rulers must control narratives, for people believe appearances more than truth. Oprah built an empire on shaping narratives, stories of struggle, triumph, and possibility. She mastered perception so well that she became more influential than many politicians. Her lesson: cultural power can rival political power. Machiavelli would have placed her alongside princes and kings. Here is where Machiavelli's metaphor of fortune as a woman turns inside out. For centuries, fortune was imagined as female, something men had to conquer. But history shows us that women themselves often wield virtue more effectively than men. The feminine face of virtue is not softness, it is adaptability. It is the ability to navigate hostile systems, bend rules, and reshape narratives. Women in power, from Cleopatra to Oprah, embody not only Machiavelli's principles but also an added skill, thriving within double standards designed to hold them back. This makes their victories even more Machiavellian because they succeed in spite of constraints, not in the absence of them. If Machiavelli were alive today, he might rewrite his metaphor. Fortune is no longer a woman to be conquered. Fortune is society itself, chaotic, unpredictable, and emotional. And in this society, women are not just subjects of fortune. They are architects of it, from politics to culture, from boardrooms to social media. Women no longer represent chance. They represent choice, strategy, power. The truth is timeless. Fortune tests everyone. Virtue decides who masters it. And history proves, again and again, that women have mastered it as brilliantly as any king or prince. Machiavelli's words were written 500 years ago, yet they echo in every story of women who seized power, defied limits, and reshaped destiny. Cleopatra, Elizabeth I, Catherine the Great, Thatcher, Indira Gandhi, Hillary Clinton, Oprah. Different eras, different methods, but one timeless truth: power yields not to gender, but to boldness. And that is Machiavelli's enduring lesson about women and power. Fortune belongs to the daring. When most people think of Cleopatra, they imagine beauty, romance, and tragedy. But Machiavelli would have stripped away the myths and seen something far more important. Strategy. Cleopatra inherited a fragile throne in Egypt, surrounded by enemies, betrayed by family, and overshadowed by Rome's rising empire. Fortune had given her a losing hand, but she did not fold. Instead, she mastered perception. She rolled herself into a carpet to meet Julius Caesar in secret, an act both dramatic and symbolic. She presented herself not as a supplicant, but as a partner worth protecting. Later, she aligned with Mark Antony, using both personal connection and political calculation to strengthen her position. Was this love? Perhaps, but for Machiavelli, that question is irrelevant. What mattered was virtue. Cleopatra understood that appearances shape power, and she wielded charm as effectively as others wielded armies. Her legacy proves Machiavelli's point. Fortune is unpredictable, but those who adapt, those who dare, can bend it to their will. Elizabeth I's reign is one of the clearest Machiavellian case studies in history. As a young queen, she was constantly underestimated. Foreign kings expected her to marry and submit. Her own nobles doubted her ability to rule, but Elizabeth turned her supposed vulnerability, her unmarried status, into her greatest strength. She refused marriage, declaring herself wedded to England itself. By doing so, she avoided being controlled by a husband and transformed her femininity into a national symbol. Machiavelli would have applauded this. He wrote, "A prince must appear virtuous, but be ready to act against virtue when necessary." Elizabeth appeared the pure virgin queen, yet she played politics with ruthless skill, crushing rebellions and manipulating alliances. Her reign gave England stability and glory, and her mastery of appearances proved Machiavelli's central lesson. Image is power. Few rulers demonstrate Machiavelli's truth better than Catherine the Great-born, a German princess with no claim to the Russian throne. She married into the royal family. Her husband, Peter III, was weak, erratic. An unpopular fortune seemed to have doomed her to a life of irrelevance, but Catherine refused to accept her fate. When Peter's incompetence threatened Russia, she seized the moment. With support from the military, she staged a coup, deposed her husband, and crowned herself Empress. Machiavelli wrote that rulers must act boldly in moments of crisis. Because hesitation destroys opportunities, Catherine understood this instinctively. She ruled for decades, expanded Russia's borders, and modernized its institutions. Her story is not one of luck, it is one of virtue, of seizing power when others were too afraid. Margaret Thatcher's rise and rule echo Machiavelli's cold realism. She entered politics in a male-dominated system that did not welcome her, but she did not seek approval. She sought dominance. Her speeches cut through opponents with clarity and force. She mastered media appearances, projecting conviction even when her policies sparked outrage. When miners' unions challenged her authority, she did not compromise, she broke them. When Argentina invaded the Falklands, she did not negotiate. She sent warships. Machiavelli's teaching, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both," could have been written as her motto. She was not universally loved, but she was respected, feared, and she left Britain transformed. Her legacy is proof that in modern democracies, Machiavellian principles still decide who rises and who falls. Indira Gandhi's story shows both the strength and the limits of Machiavellian power. As India's prime minister, she faced economic crises, rebellions, and political instability. She responded with boldness, centralizing power, silencing critics, and imposing a state of emergency that gave her near absolute control for a time. It worked. She bent fortune to her will. She appeared strong, decisive, and unchallengeable. But Machiavelli warned rulers never to become hated. Fear secures authority. Hatred destroys it. Indira's emergency rule bred resentment that eventually led to her downfall. Her story teaches the darker side of Machiavelli's truth. Power seized without balance invites fortune's revenge. Oprah Winfrey proves that Machiavelli's lessons extend beyond politics. She built an empire not with armies or decrees, but with perception. She mastered the art of connection, presenting herself as authentic, empathetic, and trustworthy. But beneath this image was sharp strategy. Oprah controlled her brand, expanded into media ownership, and built alliances that cemented her dominance in American culture. Machiavelli would have admired her. He argued that rulers must understand the hearts of their people better than the people understand themselves. Oprah did exactly that, turning emotional connection into cultural power. She is proof that in the modern world, influence is not limited to thrones. Power belongs to those who command attention. We've walked through Cleopatra, Elizabeth, Catherine, Thatcher, Indira, Oprah, and more. Each proves Machiavelli's claim. Power does not reward hesitation. It rewards boldness, strategy, and the mastery of appearances. Now, let's distill these lessons into clear principles. A Machiavellian guide for women and power. Not just in history, but in today's world. Machiavelli said, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand. People believe appearances more than reality." Elizabeth: "I mastered this by projecting purity while acting ruthlessly." Oprah built an empire by shaping how millions saw her. Machiavelli believed, "Fortune yields to the daring." Catherine the Great staged a coup when others waited. Cleopatra rolled herself in a carpet to meet Caesar. Machiavelli's most famous line, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." Thatcher embodied this principle. She was not universally loved, but she was respected and feared. Indira Gandhi, too, commanded fear, but went too far, crossing into hatred. Machiavelli advised rulers to turn disadvantages into tools. Elizabeth: "I turned her singleness into a symbol of national devotion." Women throughout history have turned stereotypes of weakness into strategic Advantages fortune is opportunity, it does not knock twice, Catherine. The great seized her chance during Peter's weakness, Indira. Gandhi seized hers in India's chaos. Though she later overreached, Machiavelli wrote that rulers must seduce their people. Not just their allies. Cleopatra seduced Rome's leaders, yes, but more importantly, she seduced her people with spectacle opera. Seduced audiences by making them feel understood. Machiavelli praised flexibility. A ruler too rigid will break under fortune's storms. Cleopatra adapted to Caesar. Then Antony. Modern leaders adapt to shifting media landscapes, turning obstacles into platforms. Half of life is ruled by chance, Machiavelli said. But the other half is in your hands. Cleopatra was born into crisis. Virtue made her legendary. Catherine was born a powerless foreigner. Virtue made her empress. Machiavelli wrote not for his own time, but for eternity. Legacy is power that survives. Death, Elizabeth's reign. Birth, the English Golden Age. Catherine's reforms, reshaped. Russia. Oprah's cultural empire influences generations. The final Machiavellian truth, the one echoed in every case study, is this: fortune does not reward the polite. It does not reward the patient. It does not reward the silent. It rewards the bold, and history proves time and again that women who dared, whether through seduction, strategy, or sheer will, rewrote the rules of power itself. What can we take from Machiavelli's timeless truth about women and power? That power is not fixed, it is fluid. It bends not to those who wait, but to those who dare. It favors not the cautious, but the bold. And though Machiavelli once wrote that fortune was a woman to be conquered, history shows us something greater. Women themselves have conquered fortune, from Cleopatra to Oprah. Their stories echo the same lesson. Power belongs to those who seize it. Fortune belongs to the daring. And that, in the end, is Machiavelli's most timeless truth. Machiavelli may have lived in a world where women were rarely seen as rulers, yet his ideas anticipated a truth history would later prove again and again. Power does not recognize gender, only strength. The faces of power have changed across centuries. Cleopatra's cunning, Elizabeth's mastery of appearances, Catherine's fearless boldness, Thatcher's iron resolve, Indira's ruthless decisiveness, and Oprah's control of narrative, but the pattern remains the same. Those who hesitate become forgotten footnotes, while those who act decisively carve their names into history. Fortune is not a gentle hand. It is a storm, unpredictable and merciless, but storms can be navigated, even bent to one's will by those with virtue, the courage to seize opportunity, the wisdom to shape perception, and the audacity to refuse the limits imposed on them. And in this way, women across time have not only endured Machiavelli's fortune, they have mastered it, proving that true power is not inherited, gifted, or begged for. It is taken